You ever watch someone abuse their power, lie through their teeth, and still somehow come out on top? Yeah, me too. Until I made sure he didn't. My neighbor thought he could bully his wife, lie to the police, and use his job as a mortician to scare everyone into silence. But I had other plans. Plans involving the truth, a cop friend, and a little something called revenge gardening. Stick around, because this is one of those rare stories where justice doesn't just knock. It kicks the door in. If you ever want to see a manipulative monster get exactly what he deserves, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is equal parts rage-inducing, heartbreaking, and so satisfying. About 10 years ago, I lived next to, let's just call him Joe, and Joe was a piece of work. Not in a quirky neighbor kind of way. No, Joe was loud, mean, and dangerous. You ever hear something through the wall, or, in my case, through open space, and your stomach just knots up? That's what it was like living next to him. It was a standalone house, not a townhouse. But even with that space between us, we could hear the fights, the yelling, the screams. At first, you tell yourself, maybe it's just a bad argument. But when it becomes a pattern, when it starts happening weekly, then nightly, you stop wondering. You start worrying. I called the cops, more than once. And I wasn't the only one on the block who did. But every time, it seemed to go nowhere. No arrests, no real consequences. Just silence. And then a day later, it would start again. Until one day, I saw her. She was standing in her driveway. We'll call her Lisa. She had her sleeves rolled up, and I couldn't ignore it. Dark bruises, faded yellows, angry purples, and a cut on her leg that looked like it went through glass. So I asked her if she was okay. Just gently. No pressure. She looked down, paused for a second, and said, "It's nothing, just clumsy." But her eyes said everything else. A few days later, she knocked on our door, middle of the night, shaking, crying. Her husband had thrown her through a glass coffee table. I let her in, sat her down, and started patching her up with my trauma bag. I was still in the military at the time, and I had EMT training. My hands knew what to do, but my mind was just spinning. Who the hell does that to another person? She slept on our couch that night. First time she'd gotten any real rest, she said, in months. But I told her she needed to go to the police. I even offered to go with her, but she refused. She said Joe had friends in law enforcement, that being a mortician gave him connections with local cops, that if she tried to fight back, it would mysteriously blow up in her face. Honestly, I believed her, so I did what I could. I gave her a safe place when she needed it, and I made sure she always had a way to reach me. I even started open carrying my pistol, completely legal in our state, just in case Joe got the bright idea to bring his violence outside his walls. One day, the calm shattered. A sheriff's deputy showed up at my door holding a restraining order. I hadn't even done anything. Apparently, Joe had told the cops that I'd threatened him with a gun on a specific day, at a specific time. Now, let me tell you something about being in the military. You get used to tracking every single piece of gear, and that includes your firearm. Funny thing is, I didn't even own a gun anymore. I'd sold it a month before. And not just anyone. I sold it to a cop. And not just any cop. This guy happened to be dating a friend of my girlfriend. We had connections too. So I called him up and told him everything. Every lie Joe had told. Every scream I'd heard. Every bruise I'd seen. He asked for the details, then smiled. The trap. That cop walked over to Joe's house with a printout of my old gun, with a ruler beside it for scale, like it was some kind of evidence. He knocked on Joe's door, holding the picture in his hand. "This the gun?" he asked. Joe didn't hesitate. "Yep, that's the one." "Was it on date like you said?" "Yeah, exactly." "Well, that's funny," the cop said. "Because this gun, it was in my gun safe that day. You just filed a false police report. So here's your citation." And just like that, the restraining order against me, poof, gone. The next time I saw Joe, he was fuming. You know the type. Chest puffed out, walking like he owns the world, but looks like it's slipping through his fingers. he made some vague threats. The kind that hide behind a fake smile. You think this is over? You should watch your back. I didn't flinch. I was just a few days out from discharge from the Air Force, getting ready to move back east. But before I left, I knew I had to do one more thing. Because guys like Joe, they don't change. They only escalate. And I couldn't risk Lisa getting hurt again. First, I helped Lisa get into a women's shelter. Somewhere safe. Somewhere secret. Somewhere Joe would never find her. But that wasn't enough. I needed to leave a mark. Something poetic. Something permanent. See, I've been doing some reading. And I found out about this plant, bamboo. Once it takes root, it spreads like wildfire. You can't mow it. You can't dig it out easily. And it'll crack concrete over time. You practically have to nuke your yard to get rid of it. So one night, I went into Joe's backyard. Quiet, careful, and I had with me a bundle of 4-inch bamboo shoots and a rubber mallet. I didn't put them in neat rows. No, I scattered them randomly in strategic clusters. Some near the porch, some behind the shed, some right in the middle of the yard. Each one driven a few inches below the soil where it would start to root and spread. I knew it wouldn't show up right away, but I also knew that once it did, it would be everywhere. Within months, it started. First, it was just a few strange shoots popping up near the fence. Then it spread to the middle of the yard. Then it cracked his walkway. The roots went deep. The problem became permanent. Bamboo doesn't just grow, it takes over. And it doesn't stop unless you dig up your whole yard or torch it with chemicals. And even then, good luck. Joe had tried to ruin my life with a lie. Tried to silence his wife with fear. Tried to scare me out of town with threats. And now, his own backyard was a living nightmare. A quiet, green reminder that some people are not to be messed with. Justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes, it comes in the form of knowing you did the right thing, even when the system failed. Sometimes, it's helping someone escape. And sometimes, it's planting the kind of seed that never stops growing. If this story gave you chills, or just made you cheer, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen or heard about? And remember, when someone tries to bury the truth, sometimes the best revenge is planting something they can never uproot.